in the dying glow of a desert sunset, as the shadows stretched long across, the mesas and wind carved small whirlwinds through the dust, a lone cowboy named Carter Reeves rode his weathered paint horse, Sage, across the wild frontier lands near the San Pedro River, a place avoided by gold seekers and lawmen alike because it was said that the spirits of the Apache watched every stranger from behind the rocks, the trees, and the wind itself. But Carter wasn't a man who feared legends or spirits. He feared debt, loneliness, and the kind of hunger that gnawed at the bones of a man who had spent the last 3 years drifting from cattle herder to ranch hand to prospector, without ever finding purpose again after the war. So that evening, when he spotted a broken branch, and then heard the low guttural roar of a creature not meant to be near dying daylight, he pushed Sage toward it, knowing that trouble meant opportunity, and opportunity meant maybe, just maybe, a meal or the chance to prove he could still do something that mattered. And when he turned the bend through a gully thick with scrub oak, he saw it, a giant Apache warrior, taller than any man Carter had ever laid eyes on, muscles taut, copper skin streaked with dust, one leg caught in a brutal iron bear trap designed by settlers who saw nothing but fear in the wilderness. And the warrior was not screaming, but grimacing, jaw locked, knife drawn, as if he planned to cut his own leg free rather than let the metal crush his bones, because that was how Apaches lived, by choosing their death rather than letting it choose them. And Carter felt the wind rip across his hat, heard the echo of something ancient in the warrior's slow breathing, and without thinking he dismounted, threw down his rifle, and raised both palms, making sure the sun was behind him so his hands glowed gold instead of shadow, because he had learned enough about respect to know that gestures could save a man from arrows where words could not. And with a calm voice he said he wanted to help, but the warrior only spat, barked a warning in a tongue Carter did not fully know, telling him to stay back or die where he stood. And still Carter moved closer, because the metal teeth of that trap had chewed deep into flesh, and any delay meant infection, amputation, or death. And the cowboy may not have believed in spirits, but he believed in men, in pain, and in the difference between a mortal wound and a preventable one. So he knelt, braced the trap with both hands, gritted his teeth against the sting of rust and blood, and forced every bit of strength from his arms until the spring began to give, until the steel jaws peeled back like reluctant predators. And when the warrior finally ripped his leg out with a violent yank, Carter thought the Apache might simply stand and slit his throat in repayment. But instead the giant dropped to one knee, pressed a palm to the earth, and whispered a word that sounded like gratitude, then collapsed, eyes rolling back into darkness, forcing Carter to sling the enormous man over Sage's saddle, half dragging, half carrying him through the night toward the nearest water source, a hidden spring only travelers who had nearly starved ever found. And Carter camped there, tending the warrior's wound with whiskey and cloth until dawn crawled across the sky like a lazy serpent. And when the Apache awoke, trembling with fever and rage, he grabbed Carter's collar in a grip that could crush bone and asked in halting English why the cowboy risked his life. And Carter, exhausted and honest, said a simple truth: nobody deserved to die alone in the desert, not even a stranger, especially not a man who had survived this long in a world determined to erase him. And the warrior blinked, stunned by the answer, as though he had expected greed or cunning or insult, then nodded once, said his name was White Bear, protector of the Hale Road clan. And with that he lifted himself upright and insisted they travel, not toward the settlements of white men, but deeper into the heart of Apache land, where the mountains folded like shields and ancient voices rode through the pines. And though Carter's instinct screamed danger, Sage snorted approval, and something in Carter's chest, maybe hunger for meaning, maybe hope, maybe madness, whispered that the road ahead was not one he could turn away from. So he followed, 3 hours into the rising heat, until they reached a basin carved with petroglyphs, where dozens of Apache warriors stood like statues, hands already on their bows. And Carter thought this would be his end. But White Bear lifted a hand, shouted in his language, and the warriors lowered their weapons, parted, and let the cowboy pass as the whole world watched him enter a camp of fire smoke, hide tents, and the smell of roasting corn. And then from the largest tent stepped a man older than time, with braided silver hair and eyes like polished obsidian, and he introduced himself as Chief Iron Cloud, ruler of the Hail Road clan, voice full of thunder when he asked why a pale rider had carried back his strongest warrior. And Carter said again the truth, though he wiped his brow and fought to stay calm under the weight of so many stares, because no one deserved to die in a trap. And Iron Cloud studied him for a long minute, then said that Carter had done more than any white man had done for Apache blood in the last 5 winters, and for that reason he must receive honor equal to the honor he gave. And Carter thought perhaps a gift of food or a horse or even a handshake, but instead the chief motioned to the tent's entrance where stepped out a young woman who moved like the wind, tall, proud, eyes sharp as flint, and hair braided with eagle feathers. And Iron Cloud proclaimed that tradition demanded Carter take her as his bride, because only one chosen by the spirits, one who saved a giant, was worthy of her. And the camp murmured, men whispering, women smiling, while Carter's stomach dropped like a stone down a canyon, because he was a cowboy, a drifter, a man with dust in his pockets and no home. And the idea of marrying a woman of such stature felt like standing before a judge he couldn't understand. But the chief insisted, and the woman named Sky Feather looked at Carter not with curiosity or fear, but with expectation, as though she had seen him in visions. And Carter tried to speak, to say he wasn't deserving, that he had debts, that he had no land, no herd, no plan for tomorrow. But Iron Cloud silenced him with a gesture and told him a story long ago, when the Apaches still roamed like clouds over mountains. A warrior saved a wounded spirit giant, and the next day, that warrior was chosen to marry the daughter of the sky, and their blood gave birth to a new age of strength, a line blessed by thunder and protected by the wind. And Carter swallowed, realizing that traditions here weren't suggestions, they were law carved by history, belief, and the bones of ancestors. And White Bear, who still limped but stood tall beside him, whispered that refusing would mean dishonoring every warrior present, including the one who would have died if not for Carter's courage. And the camp waited, and Sky Feather stepped forward, offering a small carved blade made from obsidian, handle wrapped in deer sinew, symbolic of joining. And Carter's heart hammered as he thought of the lonely plains he had ridden, the empty saloons, the nameless nights, and how without purpose a man might drift forever like dust without wind. And so he took the blade, fingers trembling, and the camp erupted into cheers sharp as arrows, drums beating like thunder, women singing ancient songs while the chief blessed the union. And Sky Feather touched Carter's cheek softly, whispering that the spirits had chosen him. And when night fell and stars gathered overhead, Carter sat by the fire of his soon-to-be new family, feeling heat on his skin, hope in his chest, and the faint terrifying knowledge that tomorrow would begin a life he had never imagined. Not as a wanderer, not as a loner, but as the husband of a chief's daughter, guardian of a giant, and a man whose actions, one moment of compassion at the edge of a bear trap, had rewritten destiny across the desert sky forever. If you enjoyed this wild western journey, remember, every act of kindness can change a life, even when you least expect it. For more powerful frontier tales, legends, and heart-stopping stories, subscribe to the Heartland Diaries, your campfire in the digital wilderness. Hit like, share, and ring the bell so you never miss another story forged in dust, blood, and honor.